Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy, Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me. And I'm back. I'm back with a brand new What If. What if Deku was Spider Man? And let's just say, I didn't even realize that I haven't done this What If yet. And surprisingly enough, I haven't. Normally, this is kind of one of the ones that most people do pretty quickly, but a good friend of mine, Mr. Crown Fiend, told me I had never done it and that I should do it, so he made me this very spiffy thumbnail. So shout out to him for that. Show him some love. Y'all know who he is. So but if anything, it should be in the links in the description below. With that said, though, I'm not gonna waste that much more of your time, and let's get into the what if. Let's get it. Heroes were something else in this world. Everybody in this world, at least the mass majority, would have something other known as a quirk, a superpower, a seeming mutation that allowed people, ordinary people like us, to do extraordinary things. But Izuku Midoriya, he unfortunately was never born with a quirk, never developed a quirk, and never got a quirk. But still, he strived to be a hero and wanted to do anything he possibly could. So that led him down the road of science. No, not the science in terms of experimenting with himself, but down the road of science to maybe be a support hero, maybe make some insane inventions, maybe support heroes from the shadows. Izuku would continue to study, and he would be a little bit of a prodigy, you could say. He'd be extremely intelligent, but frankly, others may see him as a prodigy, but to himself, he just worked extremely hard, studying day in and day out. He would take trips to some of the finest science museums they had to offer, some of the biggest and craziest companies that could ever exist. He would go from here to there, and frankly, and luckily enough, he's able to make some inventions that allow him to fund some of these scholarships, and if not, he could also provide the money for these little trips. His mother, working multiple jobs, would be happy that he's able to provide something, especially because she wouldn't have been able to afford to send him on all these trips. Every time he would come home, he would actually speak with Katsuki Bakugo about these said trips. In this universe, let's just say not everybody hates Izuku, not everybody makes fun of him for being quirkless. Yeah, that may have been a thing for a little bit, but around the age of 12 to 13 years old, this would all stop, especially when they realized that Izuku would probably be the one helping them out in the near future, especially with how advanced he was in science and technology now. Izuku would continue these trips, eventually going to this amazing inventor that he's been idolizing all his life. He would go into the building, but unfortunately that so-called inventor would be completely out of town and not really wanting to return. There's other things that need to be done outside of Japan, and his main station isn't even in Japan, it's somewhere in the United States. But he would still take the normal tour, ask a ton of questions, but eventually, during this time, experiments would be happening behind the scenes within that said building. Experiments that he would have no idea about. Nobody would have any idea about. These experiments weren't anything mind-boggling. They were just dealing with radioactive material and things like that. Things that would allow them to create infinite amounts of energy, stuff that could advance Japan and the entire world into a new stratosphere. But unfortunately, or fortunately in this regard for Izuku, that they would be doing these tests in the same building that he currently is in. This would leak over, but not leak over directly to him. It would leak over to a spider that would crawl on his backpack and go with the 13-year-old home, where he believed to be, well, completely fine. there was a bit of a outbreak in that said laboratory, but everything seemed to be handled and completely under control. There was just small traces of radioactive material around the area, but there was no way that would even have happened. How would it have happened? Well, they didn't know that a little critter was crawling around spreading that radioactive material. Nonetheless, it would be cleaned up in a jiffy, thinking that little amount wouldn't even amount to anything. But all it took for Izuku to change his life forever is one single bite. A single bite from a spider, a radioactive spider at that was under test with electricity and many other things that they were trying to make infinite amounts of energy. It would cause his body to react in a violent way. He'd smack his arm as this radioactive spider would bite him, and he would kind of laugh it off. He has heard about some sort of Spider Man or something of that sort. Maybe it was some spider monkey guy that had some weird powers, because in this world there was a comic book very similar to it. But I mean, come on. Wouldn't that be a really funny coincidence for him to get powers like that? Izuku would of course laugh this off. I mean, he makes jokes about himself all the time, and he just kind of remarks this, especially when he already has his whole future set out. He already knows he has to go down the support hero route, and he already knows that this is the best way of doing it through science and basically learning new things via inventing stuff. Izuku would eventually go to sleep, but during this sleep, he would be sweating like crazy, freaking out and seeing visions of various different things, and his senses begin to clog as if they were terrifying him at once. Just insanely quickly, he would wake up and he would see and feel bigger, taller, not by much, and also more muscular. He would feel that his body is aching as if he has a terrible fever. He would stumble down the staircase to his mother and tell her about this, that he feels kind of lightheaded. He would pass out right in front of her, and he'd be taken to the hospital. But even the hospitals would have no idea what's even going on. The boy doesn't have a quirk. He doesn't have any signs of a quirk that came in late, which even in that regard wouldn't necessarily make sense, and it wouldn't have this sort of effect. So after a couple days of testing and really no results, Izuku is eventually sent home with his mother. But nothing was really done. There's no answer to what happened, why he felt this way. Was it some sort of sickness or some sort of out of nowhere revival of a quirk? And of course they're not sure. But one day while he's in his room, Izuku would touch the wall. And out of nowhere, it seems like his whole hand was stuck. He wasn't able to move at all. He kept yanking and yanking, trying to get his hand off the wall, grabbing onto something else, trying to pull himself off, but then his hand would get stuck on that too. He would realize that he's kind of in a weird situation, but eventually he was able to unstick himself. It actually has something to do with his hands. It's like his hands have built-in grip of some sorts, but he's not so sure how that would even work. So he began to do some research about whatever is going on and what type of, animals, maybe certain beings and stuff like that have grip on their hands, or grip in general that allows them to crawl up things. And he realizes that bugs do have that sort of thing, and then he has a vast realization that the spider that bit him, that he crushed and killed, it must have done something. Maybe reactivated a quirk, but no. His quirk didn't reactivate. He has no quirk. They even said so, but he's not so sure how that would even happen. He would continue to research as much as possible and look up anything he could. Eventually, he would try and actually use webs, but he would see pretty quickly that it wasn't necessarily a thing he could use. He tries to flick his wrists and move his body in any possible way in general, but nothing would occur. No webs were coming out. So he begins to think, if he can stick to walls, maybe he can do other things a spider can. Yeah, he can't shoot webs, but maybe he can do some other things as well. Soon he would find out more and more about things he can do, including enhanced strength. And when I mean enhanced strength, I mean enhanced strength. His strength is off the charts. Of course, as we know, of Spider-Man's powers, he definitely needs to hold back. He's always held back. So one punch to his bed on accident destroyed his bed entirely. He begins to scratch his head in confusion, but luckily he continues to learn more and more about these so-called powers. And over the next year or so, Izuku would begin working, training, and getting ready. Because there's something he has in mind and something he wants to get into even before getting ready for the UA entrance exam. Yeah, of course, he's excited for that so-called entrance exam, and yeah, he's excited to join up and do his thing. But this is something he wants to get done first. He unfolds his notebook, and there's sketches of an entire outfit right in front of him. Something he's been working on for the last year while he's been going to school. It's a red Spider-Man outfit, blue down the side, and a black spider emblem right in the middle. Izuku would put it on, and he'd feel something he's never felt before. He'd feel reinvigorated. He'd feel that he can now become a hero. He begins to head outside, and he jumps out his window as he shoots something out of his wrist. A mechanical web shooter that he's been working on for a long time, something that he actually came up with throughout this last year. Many gadgets have been made, nothing too complex outside of the web shooter, but overall, he has the outfits and he has the web shooters, and he takes it out for a spin, swinging around Japan entirely and some of the cities that are nearby. Izuku begins to get a feel for what this is. He begins to think about certain tamperings that he'll need to do with the web shooters and certain aerodynamics adjustments with his suits. But he'll continue to swing on over and over as he looks around the city he's in, and looks around the country in it as a whole. He begins to stand on the highest building he can possibly find, looking over everything, thinking to himself that it's time for him to truly become a hero. While sitting above everything and, well, on a giant building, like I said, he would hear some people actually having a bit of a commotion down below him. He would slowly but surely make his way down as he hears a woman getting her purse stolen from her by 3 other men. The 3 men try and just rob her and basically kidnap her, but luckily Izuku is in the vicinity, webbing them up and stringing them from the building. They're all shocked to see this, and even the woman looks up to try to find what happened and where this person came from, but it seems like cops have already arrived and Izuku is nowhere to be found. He realized something. He probably shouldn't be seen in this outfit. If he is and is spotted doing illegal, and this is technically a legal activity, even if they are helping people, he will get into some serious trouble, especially if he wants to be a technical pro hero. He can't just go around webbing people up and getting spotted. Yeah, he might be a sort of friendly neighborhood Spider-Man of some sorts, but if he gets caught at all in this, red suits, it may be an issue. On top of that, if people begin to, connect the dots when he goes to UA, that also may be an issue if he shows some of this other stuff that he's able to do. Izuku keeps this in mind and decides to at least stay out of the limelight as much as possible. Throughout these next 10 months, which is the period of time all the way up until the UA entrance exam, he continues patrolling and actually helping people all around town. He decides that he'll take a different approach. He'll change his suit drastically and actually use certain things to his advantage. He'll make sure to not get spotted using certain items or using certain gadgets that he plans on using later on in his hero career. But also, he could just use the idea that he's just taken inspiration from this so-called Spider-Man. Still though, he is spotted, and some news sources begin to think that he's some sort of spider menace. Maybe a menace that is a vigilante. All vigilantes are menaces according to this weird dude that is extremely passionate about calling Spider-Man a villain. Nonetheless, Izuku would continue this and find even more abilities that he never knew even existed throughout this time. Eventually, after those 10 months were up, and the good amount of studying he did, which was a good 3 to 4 months of studying for the entrance exam, which, to be honest, he didn't necessarily need. He's always been extremely intelligent. But with that said, he's all ready to go. And there's one last thing he wanted to make sure he did, and that's the suits. His suit, he wanted to change it all up to make sure that nobody would notice who he is, changing the coloring entirely and the design, more stemming from a black looking suit of Spider-Man, thinking that in the dark and also at night would be even better, and there would be various benefits to this, especially when he begins hero work. He's not going to use this so-called Spider-Man outfit during this time, but he does make some different, more advanced web shooters that nobody's going to be able to notice during the entrance exam. On top of that, he begins to just add a couple gadgets to his body. Nothing crazy. He's just wearing his simple outfits, a different sort of Spider-Man suit, but a way that he can show his face and other parts of his body as well. Izuku would then begin his way all the way to the UA entrance exam. The entrance exam building is ginormous. He looks all around and he begins to walk. But as he's walking, before he can actually trip, his spider senses would go off and he would not trip on the same way he did before. Izuku has been keeping up with various things throughout the past, or at least over that last couple 10 months. Of course, he's heard about the so-called sludge villain attack. Pretty cool, All Might took him down relatively easily, and nothing really happened or occurred that was too dramatic. Izuku would never go under that bridge because, after school, he just goes to the nearest place to hide and then webs off as quick as possible. On top of that, he would just continue going about his patrols, fighting small tier villains, nothing crazy, and staying out of harm's way. So if you're thinking about what was going on around Izuku during this time, nothing too crazy for say. When he would arrive when he would enter the UA entrance exam building, he would actually see Bakugo sitting right next to him because that's where his assigned seat was. Bakugo would speak to him and ask him what his plan is to get in. And Izuku says that it seems that he's come across an awakening of his quirk ever since he's gotten extremely sick. Bakugo asks if that's really going to be enough for him to make it, but he says that he was allowed to bring some gadgets that he's made as well, as he tosses something to Bakugo too, something that can actually regulate his sweat even more on top of the bracers he already has. Bakugo grabs it out of the air and asks him what he's supposed to do with this. It seems to regulate his sweat to a concentrated area without his bracers, which he currently, doesn't have, and could have, but he decided to stray away from using them. It's going to regulate it, not like the bracers, but it can be added to the bracers later on, or the grenade bracers later on, for added impact. Izuku would say that he could thank him later, that it took him some time to make it because he's been pretty busy working on stuff on his own, and Bakugo kind of nods and says that he doesn't mind how long it took, especially because Izuku is extremely beneficial to him and many others that are his friends. Bakugo being the only one that, let's be honest, actually matters. These other people in his class were not going to make UA, and frankly, Izuku is not going to be helping them very much. There is two things Izuku is interested in and has talked to UA about, but that hasn't really came up as a subject so far. That's him being in a partial support course as well, with how much stuff he has in mind in terms of experiments and also support gear. While they're waiting, finally President Mike begins to speak, and President Mike begins to tell everybody that it's time for the written portion of the exam. The written portion of the exam is gone without a hitch. Frankly, Izuku doesn't struggle in this whole written portion of it, and he doesn't have a hard time, frankly, at all. Luckily so, because he doesn't want to deal with any hiccups throughout the exam. After this written portion of the exam, it's now time for the practical. The practical is odd, because it's not really practical. Izuku would wait and watch as Well, the practical is basically explained. There's 1-point robots, 2-point robots, 3-point robots. Izuku continues mumbling to himself as he learns what these things are, about to hear what this so-called 0-point robot is, but Tenya Ida, a blue-haired boy that's sitting in front of him, cuts everyone off, saying that Izuku needs to basically shut up or should leave. Bakugo shuts him down relatively quickly, telling him that this is how he, well, goes about things. He's writing things in his journal to benefit himself and benefit the people around, and if he knows what's good for him, he's better be nice to this one, especially with how good his tech is going to be in the near future. And Bakugo kind of smirks, and Izuku looks at him confused. Bakugo tells him not to make that face, and that he'll never defend him again. That was just annoyance on his parts. Izuku kind of laughs at this as Present Mic continues, saying that he was going to explain the 0-point robot as corrected by Tenya Ida, on top of talking about the nuisance of quote-unquote Izuku, but of course that just goes on without any other delay. Izuku would walk out toward the gates and continue to wait as the gates would eventually swing open. He would immediately grab onto the building, swinging himself outward. Everyone would be shocked, thinking that he might be that Spider-Man person, but he doesn't have the suit on and he seems kind of different. And their worries would quickly go away when Izuku would immediately shoot webs at something and it would electrify that robot, leading him to get charge all around him as if he had some sort of electricity type of power, leading him to punch another robot, sending that robot flying into another, electrocuting a big group of them. Many begin to murmur, thinking that can't be, well, Spider-Man. Spider-Man doesn't have those type of powers, and for what they know, he always wears that suit. Why would he give away his identity so easily, so quickly? And of course, Izuku thought this would kind of occur. Any doubt in anyone's mind, this would happen. Izuku could just proclaim that he is a fan of Spider-Man and he likes the idea of a vigilante taking things to his own hands, but also quipping jokes after defeating villain after villain after villain. Izuku eventually would make this clear after this whole practical is said and done, but that's neither here nor there at this moment. He destroys tons and tons of robots. Don't forget, Spider-Man is extremely, extremely powerful, and even if you want me to go based off of ones that are from video games, ones that are from, well, TV series, maybe even movies, those Spider-Men are still extremely strong. So we're talking about an extremely powerful Izuku that, yes, may be holding back, but of course isn't holding back in this regard because he's just destroying robots. This is a testing ground in a way. He's not punching into humans, which he definitely could do if he sent his hand through somebody's chest. But of course, there's restraints, because when you're the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, there always needs to be. But nonetheless, he would continue to destroy robot after robot, eventually leading to the 0-point robot arriving. Izuku would just begin to swing away, but as he does, he sees a young female underneath rubble. This woman is Ochako Uraraka. Immediately, Izuku would sling over toward her, getting all of the rubble off, grabbing her and swinging away, not worrying too much about the robots. But as he turns around, the robot is kind of catching up to them, or at least heading over to the rest of the students, so he decides to shoot some webs to slow it down, and just as he puts the young girl down, it seems as if everything stops. The robot collapses to the ground and takes the seats, and the voice on the intercom begins to say that this is all said and done, and that the practical exam is over. Izuku is pretty happy to hear this, not wanting to really show off any more power to fight that big robot, but he's happy to see that he was able to save this girl in the nick of time. She herself begins to question what Izuku is. Is he the Spider-Man? And Izuku laughs and says that is his idol. The last year or so that the Spider-Man has been basically running around saving people, he's definitely taken a ton of inspiration. Izuku then says he doesn't have much more time to explain anything further, but says that maybe he'll get more time if they both get into UA. He waves her goodbye, and Izuku leaves without even giving his name and meets up with Bakugo as they speak about what happened during the entrance exam. Even Bakugo is getting kind of suspicious about Izuku, thinking that Izuku must be the Spider-Man. Yeah, all these other dummies and idiots probably think otherwise, but come on, it's pretty obvious for him. And it's not like he'd get into major trouble as long as he stops with the vigilante work. But Izuku says that he's really not the Spider-Man, and that, like he said, he's actually doesn't have a suit even remotely close to that red suit. Bakugo grabs his bag, Izuku's bag, thinking that he'd find that red suit, but as he opens it up, it's the black one, the black suit within it. And Izuku grabs his bag back, saying that he wasn't supposed to see that quite yet. That's just a prototype. It's not done yet. Bakugo begins to question what type of suit is that, and he said that he's been taking inspiration from the Spider-Man. He looks at the suit closer, or Bakugo does, and he sees that it has different patterns. It's honestly different. Actually leans more to the strengths of that Izuku has shown. Izuku has shown more of a brutish but technical mindset in terms of fighting. And obviously the Spider-Man is more of a hit and run type of fighter, and the suit basically tells exactly what type of fighter Izuku is. And that's not surprising for Izuku. Izuku is extremely strategic in terms of what he does and of what he sets up and everything he's tested. So it doesn't surprise Bakugo one bit that that's how his suit is built. Bakugo kind of shoves this off and basically says that if he is the Spider-Man, he thinks that would be pretty cool. He's not going to say much more other than that, but he'll leave it at that as they head home and go their separate ways. Izuku would eventually get his letter from UA High School. When he opens the letter, a hologram would fall out. The hologram would bounce off the ground and emerges, well, All Might. All Might would begin speaking to Izuku, telling him that he did a heck of a job. Actually, so much so that he's the top earning student in terms of points, at least in the entrance exam, beating out actually what he's heard to be his good friend Bakugo by about 10 to 15 points. Izuku is shocked to hear this, but happy as well. It's explained the entire breakdown of the points. The points are explained that there's various different ways to actually get them. There's a hero version of it where you save people and so on and so forth. Also, helping people would have given him points as well, but he also gets points from, well, destroying robots. That's pretty obvious. All Might says that he did a heck of a job, but they're definitely going to have to speak pretty soon, because he does have a very similar fighting style to the so-called Spider Monkey or Spider-Man that's been kind of around this past year or so. Izuku kind of rolls his eyes a bit, thinking that this is inevitable in terms of them knowing who he is. But still, it doesn't matter. He got into UA and he'll continue on. But before All Might is completely cut off, he's actually begins to speak once again, saying that his request to be in the support course unfortunately is not able to be, well, instated. He can work with them here and there, but he's actually not able to find any room in his schedule to get on with the support course stuff. Unfortunately, Izuku's kind of saddened by this a little bit, but knowing that he'll be able to have all of the resources of UA behind him, he's definitely going to be using it. After this would occur, his mom and also himself would celebrate. They would all be getting pretty busy. His mother working multiple jobs, or at least jobs at this point, but she has come across some actually more honorable roles in terms of working at multiple homeless shelters for pay, but actually managing all of these homeless shelters, multiple of them, in fact, about 5 of them. Izuku would be ready to go to UA, and the first day of UA would arrive. When he would arrive, he would begin looking around to see that UA is giant. There are tons and tons of people, but as he arrives, he gets looks from everyone. Some excited, some terrified, and others angry. Many have very different feelings about Izuku, beginning with their assumptions that he is Spider-Man. Spider-Man does things by his own rule sets, and many people believe that that is not the way of going about it. And frankly, the entire world has been fed this idea. When he would arrive at the Class 1A, or the door leading into it, it would be a giant door. He would open it up and walk in, seeing that everyone's already seated, and right behind him is Shota Aizawa, their brand new teacher, other known or hero name code as Eraserhead. He grabs Izuku by the shoulder and pats him on the shoulder, saying that whatever he did in the past, or supposedly didn't do, is something that they can overlook. But everyone else that knows about it and makes their assumptions about it, those will always affect Izuku. He makes that abundantly clear as he pushes him toward his desk, telling him that there's going to be more to do and more things to prepare, especially as a hero. Aizawa looks at Izuku and he nods as he sits down, and he begins to explain to the entire class what is to be in the future and what is to prepare. He begins to tell them that first they're going to be testing their powers, their quirks, and testing how strong they truly all are. While everything is being said, many of the students keep glancing back at Izuku. This idea that Izuku is the Spider-Man, or Spider-Man himself, is something that everyone is concerned, intrigued, and even excited about. But of course, there hasn't been no omitted statement of him being the Spider-Man. But of course, everyone will make their rumors, will make their assumptions. And how will this affect Izuku in the long run in terms of him being a hero? Well, we'll have to find out on part 2 and the rest of the series of What If Deku Was Spider Man. And if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope you all enjoy this series so far, or enjoy the series in general. And sorry that this came out a little bit later in the day. I kind of fell asleep, so I had to work on it when I woke up. So yeah, we're here. I got it out to y'all anyways. But yeah, that's about it. I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.